Hi there, welcome to Suburban Cauldron. I'm Amethyst. We're going to go ahead and continue today on our journey through the full moons of the year and look and celebrate the March full moon. Along with that, we're going to bring it all into the kitchen and tie it together with probably one of the easiest desserts that I've seen made, and that is a crustless custard pie. So as we get everything together, don't forget to like and subscribe down below so that you can be sure to catch our videos as they come through and we add new content. With the March full moon, this is also known by its alternate names, the worm moon or the sugar moon, among other titles. Where we are in the wheel of the year right now, we are super excited with the fact that spring has gone by and we have celebrated Ostara, and we just need to remember that although the earth is stretching and she's getting out of bed and she's waking from her slumber, she's not always a morning person. That comes from the idea that we can have a very quick and rapid wake up with brilliant, beautiful weather, and then a very sudden and sometimes prolonged period of cooler temperatures and more snow. Around here where we film, we like to call that false spring. And I'll tell you where we are, we're expected to get a full foot of snow by tomorrow. And we were 57 degrees yesterday, and we're going to be back in the 50s by Monday. So here we are feeling that false spring event as it is. Eventually, spring will come by with its real warm weather and bright light days. The false spring can make it a challenge for those of us that are just chomping at the bit to get outside and go plant and play. It can be super tempting to get out and get our gardens in the ground and get our seedlings established and our tiny plants established, when ultimately it doesn't take very much of a heavy snow to destroy all of our work and take us even as far back to the very beginning, where we have to work even harder and restart plants and reestablish baby plants, and maybe even more costly because now we're off schedule and our harvest time has shortened. So we're going to be tempted to purchase pre-established tiny plants to get in the ground. So we really have to remember that as that worm moon idea comes around, and the idea from that is that under the ground, the worms, the grubs, the insects, and even the early plants are really starting to emerge. And with that emergence, it's going to take some time. Things are changing, things are transforming, but we really need to take our time and be patient. And with a little preparation, we can actually see the literal fruits of our labor. But if we're not patient, it can slow us way down. With the March full moon, we're also looking at balance. And that comes from the idea that March full moon is also in Libra. And so Libra is all about balance. So with that, we're looking inside and we're taking some time for self-reflection to see where in our life are we missing some of that balance. Are we missing balance in our home life with our relationships or our kids? Are we missing balance of time? Work-life balance is a really big buzzword right now, and it's really, really important to make sure that we're taking the time for ourselves as much as we're giving to others. So where are we missing that balance? And also doing that reflection and figuring out what is our best path to achieve that balance. Keep in mind here that I said the best path because, as we know, if we go the most direct path or the fastest path, that's not always the best one to get us to our goal. So always, especially with your self-growth and your, any kind of growth and change within yourself, make sure you're going for the best and not the fastest. So with the balance, the final astrological thing that I'll throw in here, and even astronomical thing that I will throw in here, is very specific to 2024. And that is the fact that in 2024, we're going to experience a couple of eclipses, one of which is a lunar eclipse that's associated with our March full moon. Eclipses are when the earth passes in between sun and moon. So the light that comes off of the sun that normally reflects off of the moon and hits us as a big bright full moon, now the earth is in the way, or sometimes it's just casting enough of a shadow in the way to dim the light that we get from the full moon. Eclipses are a really interesting time for witches, and that's just because there's a lot of debate on work versus no work. Some people will say absolutely not, no work should be done during an eclipse, and that's simply because the energies are all over the place. Some people will even go as far as to say what you're trying to do, you'll actually get the reverse effect of what you're working towards, simply because of the eclipse can literally flip things on its head. Others will say, well, no, with the eclipse, you already have the full moon that's providing you all of the power, but now you're also dealing with this celestial body that's adding in an additional pull, and that celestial body, of course, being Earth. So at this time, people will say that actually gives you a little bit more oomph and even a little more power to supercharge your spells. So what I will say to this is, do what feels right to you. And I know I say it a lot when it comes to magical work, but this one is really important. Be in tune with yourself and your own energies. For example, I have had both sides of this coin happen to me. I've had full plans to do a big ritual, put my stones out under the full moon, commune with the moon, reground, and do all of my full moon stuff, knowing that there's an eclipse coming and thinking, oh, I'm not really all that worried about it. And yet, the closer to the eclipse that I get and the closer to the moonrise that I get, the more off I feel. It's not necessarily bad as much as there's just an internal pull to settle. And the closer I get and the more off I feel, the more I realize, you know what, this just needs to change. And I will scrap my entire plan for the evening. And instead of doing all of my work outside, I'll take a long bath. I'll maybe enjoy some moon or some lunar tea, and I'll just do some self-reflecting, maybe some meditating or some journaling that evening, and just take the time for myself. The flip side of that coin is I've had evenings with eclipses in all of my years where I realize, hey, the last eclipse felt really weird. People are telling me we shouldn't be doing work during the eclipse anyway, so this is a time that I'm going to just adjust my plan and not really plan on anything and really spend that time with myself. And then the closer I get to the eclipse and the closer I get to moonrise, the more I feel like doing more than just being an observer. And sometimes I'm even more compelled to bring out my stones. So I have definitely brought myself to a point where I have done some work and brought my stones out and charged everything under an eclipsed moon, just simply because that's what my body was telling me to do. That's what my energies were saying. So it really comes down to being attuned to yourself and your own center and your own energies, and deciding for yourself, is this a work night or a no work night? So stepping away from the eclipse aside, we want to look at some work that we like to do during the full moon. And when you talk to people about the work you do for a full moon, they kind of boil down, and we talked about this a little bit with the February moon. You focus on release of energies, releasing anything that you don't need anymore, but also we talk about releasing the energies from spells and works that we were doing during the new moon or something that we started during the new moon. But also we do some self-reflecting and releasing energies that we no longer need, but also to call back to us energies that we have lent out into the world. So we just achieve that balance. And that's the big part with the March full moon, is bringing balance to ourselves, bringing clarity to ourselves, and really reestablishing where we move forward from here. So with that being said, this is a really good time to do that self-reflection and decide, am I done with my work that I did in new moon? Because if I am, then that's the direction I'm going. Is there more work to be done? Then I'm going to reestablish and reconnect with that spell. Or, is it just time to do some self-reflection? And we're going to talk about how to do all of those things here coming up. All of that being said, with what work to do on the moon, keep in mind that it's okay. It's totally okay to start spells on the full moon. You will have people tell you, no, you shouldn't start spells on the full moon. And that really just comes from the idea of release. But there's really very few times, if that's what your body feels, if you have built a spell and you've done your astrology and you have done your numerology, or you haven't done any of that, but it just feels right to you, or you've put everything together and then you've looked at your own schedule and decided, we have color guard practice, we have soccer practice, there's a swim meet, the dog needs training. This is not going to happen until this day in the week, and I'm just not going to wait for the new moon. Then by all means, you do not have to wait for the new moon to start a spell. You start the spell when the time is right, and that's going to happen in here in your center, okay? And you're going to feel that and be attuned to, I'm just going to go for it, okay? Finally, the full moon is a really good time to reestablish what we've already been doing, but really take a look at the inner changes and inner transformation and things that are coming through from us, and really acknowledge those changes, especially during the full moon in March, because we're acknowledging how things are changing and transforming as we come out of winter into spring. So really acknowledge those things, pat yourself on the back for whatever hard work there is, or acknowledge there is further hard work to be done, but I'm going to get there and I'm going to be a stronger, better person for it. Okay, now your question is, Miss Amethyst, how do we tie all this into the kitchen? And what are you talking about with this crustless pie? This is going to bring us all back around to that worm moon, right? But initially, we're going to do a little nod to the sugar moon aspect. The March full moon has this sugar moon term because right now, very similar to the idea that the worms are moving and everything's waking up, we have to also acknowledge that the trees are also in the full swing of waking up from winter. We don't see a lot of change happening to them. Occasionally, you might recognize, hey, this tree has early buds on it, or there just feels a difference. There's a difference in feeling around your particular tree, but ultimately the roots are starting to reestablish and starting to look for more nutrients and more moisture, and the sap, which is the lifeblood of the tree, is fully flowing within that tree. And what that means is it's time to harvest all of the maple. So with that maple harvest and that sweet harvest, that's where we get the sugar moon idea. So we're going to nod to that and we're going to build ourselves a dessert first. With the idea of the worm moon, however, and the custard pie, we're going to look at balance. So we're going to take a sweet dessert and we're going to add a little bit of tart to it, a little bit of a bittery lip sucker to it. And then that's going to bring us that balance. But then we're also going to really embrace the idea of change and transformation under the surface. And that's where we get the crustless custard pie. With this, there is no dough. We don't have to get a pie crust. There's no graham cracker crushing or butter melting other than to soften it a little for the custard. There's no cutting dough or buying frozen stuff because it's going to do it all itself in the oven. This is all going to blend together with a series of ingredients. We're going to pop it in the oven, and when it comes out, it will have 3 different layers, distinctly different layers to it. The very bottom will have created its own crust, and we're going to talk a little more about how it does that later, but it will have its own crust. The middle section will be a creamy, tasty custard texture, and then the top will have just a nice, crispy, crunchy top where the sugar and anything on top has kind of caramelized and created that extra crispy flavor. So with that being said, let's get all of our stuff together. Magically speaking, you're going to need a couple of different things depending on what you're doing. And I know normally in these videos I say, okay, whatever work you're doing, get out what you need to do that. For this, I can give a little more specific, but it really kind of follows a couple of different paths. If you are finished with work that you did during the new moon, this is the time to get out your old spell, and we're going to release those energies from your old spell. So if you have it written down or typed out, that's what you're going to get. If you don't, maybe you were just doing some work that didn't really require written spell, but you were working on something, a really nice way to do this is with twine or with cordage. So get a piece of string or twine or cordage or yarn, something that is a natural fiber that is several pieces twisted together in that twine kind of way. And you're going to get it in a color, if you can, that best represents the spell that you were working. And then you're going to get some scissors. If, however, we take a different path and we are not quite finished with the work that we started at the new moon, but we want to reestablish that we're going to continue and we're recommitting to that work. Again, get your old spell out. We're going to work with that, but also get a separate piece of paper and a new pen in a different color ink if you can. Or if it was typed out, just get the new one and a separate piece of paper and any pen. That works as well. If we're going to do this with cordage, maybe you didn't have a spell written out and you were just doing some work, then go ahead and get a piece of cordage that represents your original spell, and get a second piece. You can either get a second piece of the same color, or if you know that there are some changes that you want to make to the spell, you can get cordage that is a slightly different shade of the same color. And that can kind of represent, we're making some slight changes. I want to avoid, however, just a drastic difference in cordage color. So you don't necessarily want a black and a white and a red and a green. You want more of like a pink and a mauve, just a few different shades off. If you don't have something like that, or you can't really figure that out, just get 2 cords of the same color. That works just fine. And then finally, you're also going to need to get out for all of this a white candle and anything that's going to help you create a sacred space. So I've got all of my ingredients here on my counter. I'm going to do my work over on my table or in a different area. This is all incorporated as part of my kitchen. So that's my sacred space. That's going to be within my circle. But sometimes it's nice to just have a separate spot that says this is where my work is being done. And so you're going to want something to set that up. If it's a table, if it's an altar cloth, or a placemat or something like that, you can also add in with your white candle stones or other crystals, more candles, feathers, anything that helps you represent for you that this is a workspace and that you're going to be working magic there. For your dessert and your crustless custard, we're going to get several things out, but it's really easy. Most of these you'll have already in your pantry. That's why this is also one of the easier desserts to make, because it's something that you can make really quick in a pinch. You're going to need a 9-inch glass baking dish or a pie plate. You're going to need eggs, milk, butter, and sugar, flour. You're going to need cinnamon or nutmeg, and you're going to need some vanilla extract. Along with that, you're going to need some rhubarb. Keep in mind that rhubarb is A, very tart. That's where the tartness is going to come in with our dessert. But B, it is actually a seasonal plant. And if you try to find it a little early, you're going to struggle with finding fresh rhubarb in the produce section. I managed to find it frozen, so you'll notice that mine comes out of bags, but that's totally okay, whatever works, because we're still getting the aspect in here. You can replace rhubarb with some other things like a tart apple or a tart cherry. Tart cherries are a little harder to find because they're also fairly seasonal. So a super tart green apple will work here in a pinch as well. So we're going to get all of those things out, and then we're going to get started. As you're getting ready to go, you're going to make sure that you cast your circle in whatever full moon themes that you carry. So, a lot of people will just choose the white light from the full moon. If you're going with just the white light from the full moon, this is absolutely acceptable. However, make sure that you do the little nod and the acknowledgement that we are still experiencing an eclipse. So your white light, as you sweep around and create your circle, is going to have a little bit of a dingy gray hue, as if somebody's shadow passed over you at the same time, okay? And that's that nod to our eclipse. Once that's been done, make sure that you call your quarters and you call Lord and Lady. All we're going to do in this aspect is ask them to join us as we celebrate the full moon and we bring in the changes and balance that are coming as the earth continues to wake from her slumber. Welcome and blessed be. Just something along those lines. Remember, you don't have to use my words exactly. Make this feel good for you, okay? And then, as far as our March deities go, your March deities are going to stick with a lot of the spring deities that we've been talking to a lot recently, right? So we've got Flora and Fauna, we've got Persephone and Demeter, we've got the Green Man, we've got Pan. But also, because this is the full moon, remember we've got some of those lunar goddesses that we can call in. With the full moon, we like Selene, we like Luna, and we really like Diana. All right, so we'll bring these ladies in to help us with our full moon work. Once everyone is here, we're going to go ahead and preheat our oven. While I get my oven preheated to 350, I'm going to go ahead and throw out one more reminder to like and subscribe, and of course share us with your friends, because we love to share the love here. Now that we have everybody here, everybody's in attendance, we're ready to go, we've cast our circle, we've called our quarters, it's time to get to work. So we're going to start with our rhubarb and our pie plan. So we're going to take 1 of the tablespoons of butter that we have, and we're going to go ahead and grease the bottom liberally of our pie plate. And then we're just going to take our rhubarb and spread it evenly and liberally across the bottom of your pie plate. You want these sliced pretty thin. Mine is a little on the watery side, but again, that's because it was frozen. But remember how tart your rhubarb is going to end up being. So really get this a decent spread around the bottom. And then once that's in there, we're just going to set this aside for just a few minutes. As you are dealing with your rhubarb, remember to think about everything that you're doing and consider your intent for everything. And that is really just think of your correspondences, put your intent in all of your cooking. So when we talk about rhubarb, rhubarb has some very interesting correspondences. And They typically lie in the realm of love and fidelity and protection. That's the most common when you say, hey, what are rhubarb's correspondences? Those are the things that come up the most often. In addition to that, rhubarb really brings in balance and a calm and clear mind. And it's really interesting how rhubarb works, because when you look at the plant itself and how we get to that point, is the plant itself has these giant, long, thick, fibrous stalks, and then it has these large leaves on the other end of it. Remember, when you're working with rhubarb to cook with, those leaves are actually poisonous and toxic. So leave those out when you're cooking. We're just going to stick with the stalks. But as the plant itself, it has these big, heavy things that make the plant, and they tend to grow rather quickly in March and spring. The underground part of the rhubarb is very interesting because it is that early spring plant. It doesn't have room in the frozen ground to put down a thick taproot or a long set of roots. So the rhubarb itself has found the perfect way to balance itself so that it can still have this rapid growth in March, these big heavy stalks with the big heavy leaves on it, but also not so much that it uproots itself and pulls itself out of the soil. So this is a plant that just fully embodies balance in and of itself. So that's a really nice one with rhubarb as it moves through. So once it's in our pie plate, we're just going to set that aside for a few minutes, and we're going to mix everything else together. You can use a household blender. I'm just going to use my old breakfast shake blender. You can use a food processor. You can use a hand mixer and a bowl, or you can even just use your own personal power and a whisk. You're going to get tired, but the ultimate idea here is to get everything nice and incorporated. It should only take about a minute to do those things. So as I put everything in my blender, I want to talk really briefly about what we're working on here. We're taking all of these different ingredients, and we are, pardon me while I concentrate and not spill eggs, but we're taking all these different ingredients and we're going to put them together. And as you are blending, again, all of your magic and all of your work is all about vision and imagery and remembering what exactly it is that you're doing. So you want to remember that you're adding all of these ingredients in here, and then once the blender starts, you're really going to take the time to watch as the blades turn, and watch as the eggs break, and watch as everything starts to spin and incorporate itself all together, so that on the other end, when it comes out, it's gone in both liquid and solid and powdered ingredients. As I lose part of my flour, it goes in as all of these different ingredients, and when it comes out on the other end, it's all going to be one consistent liquid that goes into my pie pan. And then even after that, it's going to continue to change and alter and transform itself into even more powerful things on the other end. So really do put your intent for change and transformation in here. Imagine what all of these ingredients are. Yes, they are milk and flour and sugar and butter, but they're also perseverance, and their motivation, and they are encouragement, and all of those things that you need in order to elicit change and transformation. So finally, my last ingredient that's going to go in here is a softened butter. So part of the butter I had was used in my pie plate to grease the bottom, and then the rest I've softened in the microwave a little bit just to add to my custard, and that is going to be the last thing that goes in. Hold out a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of the granulated sugar. We'll use those again later on once we put everything together before we throw this in the oven. And then this is just going to blend for 1 to 2 minutes so it's fully incorporated. And it doesn't take a real long time, but remember, as it's spinning and doing its job, you're watching really closely as everything incorporates. All right, that is all nicely incorporated, and so we're going to move some things around, bring our pie plate back, and add in the rest of our ingredients. And we're just going to pour this over the top. If you get pieces of rhubarb that float, that's okay. We're just going to push those guys down so everything is coated in the custard. That's the bigger thing, is we want everybody to be nice and coated in the custard. You may have a little extra depending on the size of your pie plate. A 9.5, this is a 9.5. You can go as big as a 10 to get it a little bit smaller. You can go as big, or you can go as small as an 8. You can do the square dishes as well. That works just fine. All of this is on top. I might take a little sprinkle of my cinnamon to put over the top, and I'm even going to crunch in or just sprinkle over some regular granulated sugar. You can also use a raw sugar just to give it a little bit more of a crunchy as you bite into it. That's a technical term. And I might even, with my cinnamon sprinkled over the top, I might even try my hand at making a symbol on the top of my custard just to give it a little bit more of that magical feel to it. All right, there is my pie. This is going to go in the oven. It's going to go in for about 350 degrees, and it's going to go for about 35 to 50 minutes. And the reason I say that is ovens are a little bit different when it comes to temperature and timing, so be really careful with that. I would start checking it about 35 minutes. While that cooks in your oven, that's going to be a good 35 to 45 minutes in your oven. So you've got some time to do your magical work. So I've kind of set up a little bit of an area for myself just to, it's within my circle, but it's a good space to really designate as my magical work. When we are at this point, we have a couple of different paths that we can look at and take when it comes to our magical work. The first one being to fully release the energy that we used and that we put into a spell at the new moon. The second path is to revisit that spell that we started at the full moon and maybe recommit to that magical work and reestablish we're moving forward and just continue with the steps. Or sometimes if we didn't even have a spell that we were working, we can sit and just do a little bit of self-reflection and self-care at this point. So the first path we're going to take is the one where we release all of our energies. With that, you're going to light your candle and you're just going to gaze into that flame, and you're really going to think about the work that you did to achieve your goal. Did you achieve your goal? Was it difficult? What were the struggles that you had to go through? Did you have to ask for help? And ultimately acknowledge all of the hard work that went into it. You know, as American adults, it's so easy to forget to toot our own horn, as you will, or pat ourselves on the back and really celebrate that sometimes achieving something was really difficult. We had to restrict ourselves. We had to really dial in our dedication. We had to find some extra motivation and encouragement. Sometimes we have to step outside our comfort zone to reach those goals. So all of those things should be acknowledged as something that we did, and that was hard. So make sure that you acknowledge those things. While you're thinking of all of that and you're visiting your spell, you're going to take your spell and you're just going to use your scissors to cut it into pieces. You can cut it into strips, you can cut it into tiny pieces, you can cut it all the way down into confetti. You don't even have to follow a certain pattern, you're just going to cut it up. And while you're cutting it up, you're going to visualize all of the energies pulling apart and leaving your spell. And we're going to give those to the candle flame and let it leave, okay? If you feel like your spell needs to go all the way down to dust or ash and you feel like you need to burn this, that is perfectly fine as well. Just be really careful with burning any of your papers or things outside. Use your barbecue with the lid on if you can, or just be aware that most of the country is still, even with the foot of snow we're supposed to get, we're still dealing with some drought conditions and some wildfire concerns. So don't burn your whole neighborhood down, okay? Just be really careful with anything you burn. But ultimately, we're going to release these energies from our spell. While we're cutting everything up and we're tearing the pieces apart and we're ripping and we're freeing the energy, we're going to say the words to ourselves or to the spell itself. My work is done. My will has won. Now I release the energy to join the sun. As I grow and as it harm none, so mote it be. And we're just going to let those energies go with the flame, and we're going to visualize them leaving. Don't be afraid that you are losing this energy. I know that you put a lot into this and it was a lot of hard work, but don't be afraid that that energy is gone forever. Remember that you are a part of this cycle. So it's going to go out into the universe, rest, recharge, and then come back to us as we need to use it. So we're just putting this back out into the cycle to rest, but we're releasing it from its hold on the spell that we were working. Okay, the other option that we have is, instead of cutting up our paper, we're going to take our spell and we're going to review it. And again, we're going to go over, where are we in this process? What needs to change? Do we need to change anything? Do we need to buy certain supplies? Do we need to ask for help in any particular way, shape, or form? And that can be a really important step, because that's sometimes the hardest one that we have to take. But it's really important to revisit that. And for this, we're going to go ahead and write down on our spare piece of paper any changes or adjustments that we want to make to our spell. If there are none, then that's fine. We can just write down kind of a status report on where we are. But ultimately, you have two new pieces, or you have a new piece of paper that you're going to keep with your original spell. Say the words from your original spell. And as you say them, change anything in your words from opening or starting or beginning, anything like that. You want to change those words to continue or hold open or advance further, or, use your thesaurus to find the right words to say, I know that this is not complete and I am continuing the work. Okay, we're going to say those words, we're going to add to it. And then once we're completely done with everything and we leave our circle, we clean up our mess and we leave our circle and we take all of our stones outside to put under the full moon, we're going to take our new spell as well. And we're going to weight it down with some crystals so it doesn't blow away overnight. And we're going to put it out there and then let the full moon charge it. The next day, when we bring all of our stones back in and they go back to where they live on their altars, in their shelves, in your bra, in your purse, wherever you keep all your stones, we are going to fold up our little piece of paper and our spell, and we're going to keep it with us until we're finished with that work. So you can keep it shirt pocket, pants pocket, purse, wallet, phone case, just somewhere that you're going to glance at it and remind yourself on a regular basis. It doesn't necessarily have to be every day, but a regular basis that you want to revisit this work, right? And it helps to anchor you into, oh, right, I had a project I was working on. I want to keep moving forward with it. That all being said, either of these two spells and either of these two pieces of work can be done without your paper. It can be done with a bit of twine, like we talked about in the beginning, where you can have a bit of string that represents the color, or in a color that represents your original spell. If you are releasing these energies, you can say the same words: my work is done, my will has won. Now I release the energy to join the sun. As I grow, as it harm none, so mote it be, right? We're going to repeat all of those things. Remember, you don't have to say my exact words. Make this fit what is in your heart, right? I like to rhyme sometimes, but sometimes it's hard to come up with something. Don't force the rhyme. The rhyme is there simply so you help you remember it, okay? But we're going to say those same words, but as we're doing that, instead of cutting up our paper, we're going to destroy the twine that we have. So we're going to take all of the knots out that are representative of the steps that we took to finish the spell. We're going to take the knots out. We're going to start to untwist and unwind the twine, and we're going to pull it apart into its individual parts. That may be enough. If that doesn't feel like enough and there's still energy flowing within that spell, then keep pulling it apart. And if you get down to where you just have a little ball of wool in front of you and you feel like that's good, then that's fine. Go as far as you need with this. But what we're doing is we're releasing those energies, so we're untangling them from each other. The other option is if we are recommitting to our spell. In that instance, we're going to take the two pieces of twine and we're going to join them together somehow. You might braid one and then weave the other into it. You might tie them together and then loop them around a wrist or an ankle or make a necklace out of it. Kind of like when we were kids and we had a little piece of rubber band or twine that we tied around a wrist to remember something. It's the same basic concept. And even if people ask you, why do you have just a random piece of twine around your wrist? You know what? That is a great answer is, oh, it's just something to remind me of a project I was working on. And that's all they need to know, right? If they want to push it, you can absolutely push back with, hey, I appreciate you respecting my boundaries and my privacy, and that's for me to know. But ultimately, people tend to accept the answer because we remember when we were kids, all right, that's something that we used to do all the time. And of course, if you put it around your neck, you can hang a charm from it or a stone from it, and people tend to worry about just a random piece of twine way less when it has a point with a charm or something on it. So now it's a necklace, right? The other thing that you can do is you can tie the ends together and you can wind one up into a ball, like if it were a ball of yarn that you were getting started, and then add to it the new twine and the new color as you go. And then at the end, just tie it off and same thing, put it out under the full moon with the rest of your crystals and then keep it in a safe space where you're going to look at on a regular basis. Okay, that is working with our previous spell. If we didn't have a previous spell, then this is a good time for self-reflection. So again, you're going to light your candle, you'll gaze into the flame, and you'll just kind of fall into that meditative state almost and do that self-reflection. In that instance, this is when I kind of do that self-look and I look at myself and I'm picking out things that I maybe am done with, right? I'm releasing the energies that I no longer need. And so literally because, and it's habit because I'm always covered in dog hair, I'll just pick little pieces off and I'll give it to the candle, right? I don't need this anymore and I don't need that anymore and I don't need this anymore. This is my negative self-talk. This is my negative self-esteem. This is an argument I had with my partner. This is something my kid said. This is a worry that I had about my dog. Whatever the case is, those things that we don't need anymore, release those out, okay? And make room. Imagine that what you're attracting and the little dust mites that come back are going to be the positive things, right? We're now going to have bits of positive self-talk and positive conversations with your partner and, you know, open communication with your teenager or better understanding with your teenager. That's a big one everybody wants, right? You can also go as far as to find big pieces that you don't need anymore. And remember, we're releasing the negative and we're releasing energies that we don't want to carry anymore. And we're welcoming in and we're bringing back and we're calling back to ourselves the bits that are ours. All right. So you might even carve out a piece and give it to the flame, right? Or carve out a piece and give it to the flame. But don't leave those bigger areas. Don't leave those empty, right? Remember when we talked about cleansing, don't leave a void. So take a little mental seed, make a little mental seed in your hand and plant it and say to yourself, I don't want this anymore. I release these negative feelings. I release this negative thought. And I plant in that spot the seeds of positive self-talk. I plant in this spot the seeds of open communication with my teenager. I plant in this spot the seeds of financial balance and oneness with my family. And, you know, find those things that you're looking for to bring in. This is the time to do that. Release the negative that you don't need anymore, but don't leave the void. Plant the seeds that you're looking for. Now that all that work is done, don't forget to extinguish your candle. Don't just leave it as a fire hazard in your kitchen. Remember to snuff it, don't blow it, so you don't blow all of the energies out of it. And then you can either leave this for a little while for the rest of the evening for the full moon, or if this is a space like my dining table where your family's going to gather and eat, you can put all of this away or gather it and put it in a safe spot so that you can put it away in a little while. But ultimately, right at this point, we should be at that 35, 45 mark on our oven. So we're going to keep an eye on it because, again, our custards and our ovens are a little different. So the temperatures can be different, the timing can be different, and we just want to keep an eye out. What we're looking for with doneness is a nice brown color on the top. And when we move our pie pan, it doesn't jiggle too much. So I'm going to check on that and we're going to keep an eye on it. Welcome back. I have taken my pie out of the oven and mine was done right about 40 minutes. And when you're looking at your pie, you want a nice brown, golden texture on the top and color on the top. And you want the middle to be set. So when you wiggle it, there's not any movement to it at all to your pie. So I'm going to serve mine up. This serves really well with ice cream, either vanilla ice cream or some whipped cream. I've made some whipped cream. I realized last minute I was out and I was not about to go out in the blizzard and get some ice cream, some whipped cream. So I went ahead and made some. It's super easy. But this would also go with any kind of, if you really want to get fancy, you can do like a strawberry compote or raspberry compote. Just make that syrupy, sugary sweetness to go with your pie. You can also serve this with a strawberry ice cream or really vanilla, strawberry, chocolate, any of those Neapolitan type flavors. This would go good with a chocolate drizzle. There's just so many options with this. So I'm going to get going on mine. So we'll see how this comes out. And you can kind of see how a little bit of the rhubarb wants to come, but there is a crust to it. It's not just falling completely apart. What's really causing issues is the rhubarb more than anything. But this does serve really well. And we'll put a little dollop of, okay, a big dollop of whipped cream on there because let's not tease ourselves, right? So I'm going to take a little bit of whipped cream, get a little rhubarb going. Oh, that crust is really nicely firmed. It's really sweet. I tried to nibble a piece of rhubarb as I was putting this together, and let me tell you, that tartness kicked my butt. It will remind you how tart it is, but this is perfectly balanced, which is what we're looking for. So this is really fantastic. As you guys are wrapping everything up, don't forget to release your quarters and release Lord and Lady and open your circle. Remember that anytime your circle is open, it is open and yet unbroken because deity is always with you. I'm going to finish my pie. You guys have a fantastic and blessed March full moon. May the Lady bring you all of the change and transformation and strength that you are looking for in your life. And don't forget, once again, to like and subscribe down below. And of course, share us with anyone that you think would appreciate our content. And with that, I'm going to leave you with a merry meet, merry part. And we are definitely going to see you next week. So merry meet again. Blessed be, everyone.